Carolina summers are relentless, thick with heat and humidity that builds from June straight on through to September. I mean, you step outside and you're drenched with sweat.
And it was hot. It was hot back then.
In Chapel Hill's black community in the 1950s, the only relief was the creeks and the swimming holes, the 88, the Catfish Hole, the one down by the railroad trestle. Doris Bynum remembers the creek on her father's nearby farm.
Our daddy had a creek in the farm. It ran through the farm, and in the evening, we girls, we didn't know what bathing suits were at that time. We would pull off we would swim in our panties and bra, and go in the woods and throw them aside and jump in the creek and have a good time.
So, but for the most part, we had two favorite holes that we would go swimming. There was one called the Catfish Hole, which is beyond the north side area that you referred to. Mm-hmm. And then there was the 88, which was beyond Tin Top, pretty close to where Lincoln is now. So those were our favorite holes.
But the creeks had their hazards.
And we'd see snakes, and things, as we going down through that path, you know what I mean?
The snakes was right out there, and we didn't have sense enough to know. I remember once we went to the creek and we saw a snake up under the bank, and we rocked the snake out the way. Oh, we got to get rid of him. He went in the water, and lo and behold, we jumped right in there behind him. I guess we thought he was going to go on down the creek, and I look at those things and I laugh.
We'll push off the snakes, and we'll go swimming. Why? We had nowhere else to go. So one of the kids, he was there, and he got bit by a water mosquito, and it killed him. So now everybody in the neighborhood was like, hey, we got to do something. Keep our kids out of the creek.
And snakes weren't the only danger.
As a little boy on Mitchell Lane, they used to have these huge concrete, where the water and the sewer ran through. It was open. You could see feces going right down this was before they made them, they found out that it was unsanitary. Well, they knew it was unsanitary. They had to cover up those big concrete pipes, and we used to play in them, you know what I mean? And I don't know if anybody got cancer from the distribution of the waste and stuff. I don't know.
And most of the swimming holes were polluted. Sewage dumped in those swimming holes. They didn't have sewer pipes. Everything dumped into the streams. But we had to swim in those.
And then the boys used to go over to the trestle and jump in that sewage water and learn to swim, because there was no way, for us to learn to swim. Mm-hmm. So the girls didn't play that.
And many of our friends developed typhoid fever, and they died. We didn't know why they were dying. The only thing we knew is we wanted to swim. And when we found a swimming hole deep enough, that got to be our swimming hole.
Children were swimming in contaminated water and dodging snakes because Chapel Hill swimming pools, like Chapel Hill High School, the lunch counter at Colonial Drugstore, and the movie theater downtown, were all closed to black residents.
There was a swimming pool in Olmsted Park, and the white kids, they were just jumping and swinging, and we could hear them. But we had to go to the creek that was behind that ran behind the swimming pool. And we'd go down there after a big rain. It would come around a curve, and it would sort of like gather up there, and that was our swimming pool.
But across town, the University of North Carolina had a pool, built during World War II for the Navy's pre-flight training program. For some young people growing up in Northside, it was hard to ignore.
There was a group of us. I guess I must have been about 14, 15 years old. We decided that we would go down to the pool here.
At UNC?
Yeah. And we went. My mother never knew this. I guess it must have been 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. There was about 4 or 5 of us. And we just had to get in that pool, which we did.
David Mason and his friends found their own way in at 4 in the morning. Ed Caldwell Jr. decided to knock on the front door in broad daylight. Caldwell was a Lincoln High student when he and 2 classmates walked onto the UNC campus with a question. UNC was no longer fully segregated. It had started admitting black undergraduates in 1955. So why were white Chapel Hill High School students allowed to use the university's pool while black students from Lincoln High were not?
Well, we made a proposal. Me and Frank and another fellow by the name of Nelson Rixby said, let's go to Frank Graham with this proposal that since the white kids are swimming, they're allowing the white kids to swim 30 days a month. We will, if they let us swim 1 day a month, then we'll empty the water. They ain't worried about the water being polluted because black kids are in the swimming pool. And we'll clean it. We'll sweep it out, we'll clean it. You give us 1 day.
What Ed Caldwell and his classmates ran into at UNC wasn't an accident or an oversight. Across the South, public pools were segregated by law. Even in northern cities, they were segregated by design. They were either built in white neighborhoods or kept whites only through violence. Segregated pools weren't just a local failure, they were a national policy. In Chapel Hill, Ed Caldwell and his friends said they would empty the pool. They would clean it. They asked to swim for just 1 day, and the answer was no. To understand that answer, you have to understand Black Chapel Hill in the early 1960s, its boundaries, where they could and could not be safely crossed, and the community that was built within them.
You actually learn as a child where you can go and be safe and not harmed. The kids had to learn early.
Since I grew up in segregation, I knew that I had to, I felt that I should accept it. I should go to the fountain to drink from the colored water. I should sit on the back of the bus. I should follow the rules so I wouldn't get harmed. You were trained to accept this is the way it is, to keep out of trouble.
But the upshot of the whole thing is that you get to write your own narrative. You have Windy Hill is a wall of your house. North Side is a wall of your house, of Pottersville. Tin Top is one of the sides of your house. South Lane is another side of your house. Pine Knolls is the other side of your house. But in that house, you get to write the narrative. And you are professionals, you're teachers, you're stonemasons, you're laborers, you have your own homes to grow into in a community and see people who are professionals with their own homes.
But right next door to that haven on the west end of Chapel Hill sat Carrboro, home to textile mills that employed large numbers of working-class white citizens whose racism was all too familiar to Chapel Hill's black residents.
It was the people who didn't have very much were the ones that were the most racist. Okay? That's why we never went to Carrboro, because that was mill hand. Those are the people, man, that would do you in because they needed to have somebody beneath them.
Parents would tell us there are certain places after dusk you need to be at home.
When you cross that railroad track out there at night, that was the white side of town. You didn't have no business in Carrboro.
White men thought it was their appointed duty to cross over into Northfield or Pottsville to rape black women and kill black men and then go back to the other side of town and not have to pay a price for that balance.
The black community's grievances ran deep. Years of white men crossing into Northside and Pottersville to commit violence with impunity. The Great Depression had made conditions worse for everyone in Chapel Hill, but it fell hardest on black residents. And mill closings in Carrboro in 1935 and 1937 had left hundreds of white workers without income and desperate, which the black community understood could be dangerous. On the night of August 21, 1937, that tension broke open. UNC history grad student Yanni Chapman asked about it in oral history interviews for his dissertation research. Junius Scales, a UNC student who later gained notoriety for his membership in the Communist Party, witnessed what happened directly. And David Caldwell heard the stories firsthand.
In 1937, in August, summer night, Saturday night, somewhere on the line in between Carborough and Chapel Hill, there's a newspaper story in the Chapel Hill Weekly.
There was a confrontation between blacks and whites.
It took place where Carborough and Chapel Hill meet, at an Esso station that sat across the street from where the Crooks Corner building stands now, at the intersection of Franklin Street and Merritt Mill Road.
There's a white guy pumping gas. Somebody knocked out his window with a rock. That was right across from Crooks Corner. Knocked out the window with his rock. Black guy walked by. He hit the black guy. Black guy went to him. The guy worked at the service station stopped him.
Black person at a gas station got hit over the head by a white gas station attendant.
The police was called. The chief got there. It was only three. I think it was Chief Sloan. Took the black guy, was taking him to the doctor in Carver, and everybody thought he was being arrested.
It had to do with a black who had been arrested. I think the charge was about as specific as that he was uppity. There was tremendous resentment in the black community.
The black crowd gathered.
A large group from both sides gathered.
Police took the white man and put him in the Carborough jail for his own protection. Black crowd gathered around the jail, menaced the jail. They took the white guy and took him to Hillsborough for protection. Crowd stayed in the street, stopped automobiles, threw rocks, shot off firearms.
The riot started.
I'd been with a bunch of high school kids to Sparrow's Pool. We'd spent the afternoon swimming in the pool. We were coming back this day, and as we went down the main street of Carborough, we looked on the left side of the street were a couple of hundred blacks, men and women. On the right side of the street, mostly men, were white, a bunch of white guys, screaming epithets and threats and so on.
They went down in Tin Top and several other places shooting, where the blacks got on top of the housetops, and they were shooting back at them. As the whites came through, they took a flatbed truck and put railroad ties that they, I guess, gotten from Carborough down there along the truck.
I heard firsthand that there were injuries, and I believe shots were fired.
I think two black guys got wounded and had to go to Lincoln Hospital in Durham to get seen at, and they said they were in a vehicle accident. I think two white guys got hurt. One fell off the truck and got hit by a car. One fell, and one of the railroad ties fell on him. But the thing is that the town leaders got on the chief and saying he wasn't doing his job, and authorized him to buy machine guns and hand grenades. I think even a Gatling gun they bought from Chicago.
The town's response was to arm itself. The black community's response was to protect itself.
The Scales household was without servants for the next 3 days. And when they came back, they told me that they hadn't dared set foot out of their houses for 3 days, that white goons were walking up and driving up and down the streets, and that they'd simply had to stay in their houses, and they didn't dare go to work, and so on. The threats had been absolutely terrifying. They were afraid their houses would be burned, but there was a reign of terror for 3 days, and this in the enlightened Athens of the South, at Chapel Hill.
I think that it was a fairly important event in this community.
Took place in this, okay.
Because there was a big article in the Chapel Hill Weekly by Louis Graves.
Okay.
And then in 1937, if you check the earlier Chapel Hill Weekly, said that these areas were worse than the ghettos in New York.
Graves did acknowledge that black residents lacked basic community infrastructure, but his framing revealed his assumptions. Like a lot of reformers of his era, Graves tended to attribute problems in the community to the moral character of his people, to be solved with academic study and government intervention. Without a community center, he wrote, black young people had little choice but to go to such resorts as cheap dance halls, conditions that, in his words, tend to debasement. The article that Graves wrote didn't suggest that Chapel Hill's black neighborhoods were a segregated community that was wronged and unfairly barred from using town resources. Instead, he saw the neighborhoods as, quote, an ideal laboratory for modern economists and sociologists. The solution wasn't bending the hearts and minds of white residents toward racial justice, but instead having academics study the black community to propose social reforms.
See, you got to also understand who writes the papers. You got to also understand that how white persons see black.
Well, I'd say that Louis Graves, I wouldn't trust his journalism worth a hoot.
Whatever his motivations, Graves was right about one thing. The riot highlighted problems in Chapel Hill that needed solutions.
There was a lot of changes that took place after that, including, seems like a lot of white support for the development of the community center.
But the story of how that support translated into action and whose understanding of the problem was going to drive the solutions is a lot more complicated.
Came from the riot. It came from some of the behavioral problems that were happening on the corners. They began to say there need to be some wholesome places that persons that didn't want to hang on the corner or good people could go somewhere else and didn't have to hang out with bad elements. There were fights and other things that came from that. You know, people were drinking beer and whatever, and the community center was built because they said there were no good social kinds of things blacks could attend. We always joke and say, anytime 3 or 4 blacks get together and they start talking, laughing, and whispering, whites think that they plotting, to start a riot.
People in the community got together and said, we need this facility. Mr. Louis Graves, who was the editor of the Chapel Hill News, he was involved in it. Mr. Holmes, who there's a recreation center in Durham named after him, he was involved in it, and people like Miss Rebecca Clark, Mr. Willis Bobby and his brother, and just a citizen in the Northside Pine Knoll community.
The community didn't just advocate for it, they built it. 10 community members involved with a Black Citizens Association raised funds to buy the land to build what was to be called the Negro Community Center at 216 North Robertson Street. That land was formally deeded to the town of Chapel Hill on July 29, 1940, with the intention of providing a recreational space for black residents. The Works Progress Administration provided federal funding. White residents and UNC alumni wrote checks to supplement what black citizens had already raised. And black skilled workers, masons and carpenters, showed up after their day jobs and built much of the center with their own hands.
A lot of the rocks came from Mr. Charles Craig property on Merritt Mill Road. The community went out and got the rocks and brought the rocks over. And they would mainly work on the building after they got off from their regular job during the day, where the men would come over and work, and their wives would bring them dinner while they were working.
Construction began in January 1941, but by May it had stopped. The country was mobilizing for war, and federal money was flowing elsewhere. World War II would finish what the community had started in an unlikely way. When UNC was selected as the site for one of the Navy's new pre-flight schools, it came with a band. The B-1 Navy Band was, for the first time in the Navy's history, made entirely of black musicians. UNC denied them housing on campus while providing housing for white servicemen. So the Navy struck a deal. In exchange for using the unfinished community center as quarters for the band, the Navy would complete the building. The center that the community had fought for, funded, and built with their own hands was finally finished in 1945, courtesy of a segregated Navy that had nowhere else to put its black musicians.
It was an all-black Navy band that were put together to come here to perform. When they came, they didn't have a place to live, so they stayed at Hargraves. And so that's when it was put on hold as far as being completed as a community center.
The sailors who were part of the Navy band came to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and were not allowed to be housed anywhere on the campus. So they were housed at Hargraves Center. They were asked to come to perform at the university, and then all the members, because they were black, they couldn't stay with the other members. I was just, it was just crazy. It was just unthinkable, but all at the same time, because your skin was black, it determined what you could do and what you could not do. And they were fighting for their country, but yet at home.
The men of the B1 band were among the most talented musicians in the country. 44 of them, drawn primarily from North Carolina A&T College, enlisted together on June 1st, 1942. Their director was James B. Parsons, a man who would go on 2 decades later to become the first African American appointed to the U.S. District Court as a federal judge. At the pre-flight school, their show band was known as the Cloudbusters. They performed for the Navy, but they could not eat with the Navy or sleep where the Navy slept or attend the Navy's own school of music. They lived at Hargraves, in the building their neighbors had hauled rocks and worked nights to build, until 1944, when they were transferred to Pearl Harbor. But while they were there, the neighborhood knew it.
Okay, but during World War II, they built Hargraves Center. They would leave every morning about 7 o'clock in the morning and march in rain, sleet, and snow from right up Robinson Street all the way to Cameron Avenue, all the way in front of the South Building, and do the drills for the pre-flight school. Then they would turn around and go back. This is twice a day, every day. And I would see the drum major and all, and I loved that.
And then it was turned back over to the community after the Navy band left. The Navy band completed construction of the facility, and it was turned back over to the community. And at that point, it was used as a recreation center in Chapel Hill.
On October 24, 1945, the completed building was formally returned to the community. 2 years later, on October 23, 1947, the center hosted the first official meeting of the Chapel Hill Carrboro NAACP. For the next 15 years, the center was the center of black life in Chapel Hill, in every sense. It was where children went after school and where families gathered on weekends, where dances were held and sports teams practiced, where the youngest kids spent their days in Holmes Daycare while their parents worked. It was simply the place.
Well, it was the only place in Chapel Hill that black folks could go.
It was a gathering place for the children in the community. It was a space that you can go to and feel safe because you had the older kids that would take care of us. And our parents just sent us there in the summer. That was our second home, in a sense.
The center needed someone to run it, and Chapel Hill found her close to home. Lucille Caldwell was born and raised in the community, the daughter of Dr. Edward and Mrs. Minnie Caldwell. She had gone to North Carolina College at Durham for her degrees. UNC was still not an option. In 1950, she became the center's first paid director.
Yeah, Miss Lucille Caldwell. She was there for a long time. We kind of grew up with Miss Lucille.
What was she like?
She was a good person. She looked out for us. She was real strict. You didn't follow by the rules. You know, she dealt with you.
Somebody mentioned Miss Lucille. I was here when Miss Lucille was here. Miss Lucille was a phenomenon. You didn't play with Miss Lucille. She was worse than a man. And that's the truth. But she was also the sweetest, most wonderful surrogate mom you could ever want.
Lucille Caldwell was like the military sergeant. She was like A, B, C. You had to do it her way. And she would teach us dances, how to carry ourselves as young people. She knew all of us. And if we were doing anything that was mischievous or out of her range or something she didn't approve of, she was there. She watched over us, and I remember many days we would see her coming, and we would duck in the bushes because we didn't want her to see us.
If she caught you, she would expel you. You couldn't, you would get put out of the center. If you were caught doing anything that was incorrect, improper, she would send you home and tell you not to come back until X amount of days. You didn't really mess up.
They had a nice nursery, kindergarten, preschool, whatever you want to call it, going on here.
Of course, all of us went to nursery school and laid on them green cots they had. I know y'all know. Don't act like y'all don't know. And drunk that tomato juice. And what was it? Cod liver oil or something. We didn't get no cold. We didn't get a cold.
And there, the instructors there, they really took care of the kids. There was that community involvement where the parents knew the instructors knew the children, their family. There was a connection. You couldn't do anything wrong and get away with it.
I remember the first day I went, and I was like, didn't want my mama to go, and I cried. And they put me in this room, this closet, in this high chair. I guess that was my time out space. And I didn't cry anymore after that.
For older children and teenagers, the center offered something essential, somewhere to be and something to do.
Every Friday and sometimes Saturday night, they would either have movies for people to come. A guy named Frank Joe used to have movies over here, and they would charge you 15 to 25 cents to get in. If they weren't having movies, they was having a dance.
The guys were on one side of the room and the girls were on the other side of the room, but the music played on. And there were very few of us who dared to step forward and be brave and dance as a couple.
It was never one of those things where we lacked for something to do. Games we made up, we would do it here at the center. Center pool, ping pong, all of that was done right here at the center. The area where the playground is now was woods. Won't none of that there. Won't none of that there. The tennis courts, won't none of that there. This little area out here, the parking lot, won't none of that there. It was just the center and a little road where you could come in and park, whatever, and that was it. Because like I said, that many people didn't have cars.
All the equipment it had, like the jungle gyms for the kids on outside. Went from the jungle gym to playing horseshoes. Then going inside, we had the billiards and ping pong back and forth. That was a really fun game we played. And it was just a place that we can just go hang out and mingle and just be with the community. It was a safe place.
We were encouraged to go outside and burn off all that energy. So there was no sitting in time out.
We played shuffleboard, played old maze. I ain't nothing about spades then. We played old maze, any type of game, do puzzles, watch TV, play pool, piano.
Then we used to go there and have a good time. We used to have little talent shows there. I used to sing little doo-wops over there, and we had a really good time.
going there, seeing the friends, you can see the whole African American community, the Northside community, in one space.
By 1960, the neighborhood's community center had become something larger than a recreation center. On May 9th of that year, Martin Luther King Jr. came to Chapel Hill. He gave his talk there. Word traveled about the center, and visitors who knew it was in a black neighborhood sometimes arrived expecting something broken. What they found was something beautiful.
They would come into town, they would come to Hargraves and talk about how nice the place is. And that's because once they find out this is Hargraves Recreation Center, it's in a black neighborhood, there should be something wrong with it. There should be broken windows. There should be, holes in the wall. Just because where they come from, you got a place that's a bad place. So everybody just go ahead and automatically say, well, Hargraves is going to be the bad place. And it's not.
When I came to Hargraves Center, that after school, there was this big melting pot of black people. That's where we went after school. And what you have to understand in this process is that there's struggles that you go through. So Hargraves Center became a place in the afternoon where you could come, play basketball, horseshoes, ping pong, that kind of thing. So on one level, it gives us a place to play. On another level, it gives you an opportunity to wind down on what's going on in the community around you.
By 1961, the center had been at the heart of community life for 15 years, and the community was about to do what it had done before, come together to build something important. And it started with that group of high school students deciding to ask a simple question. Why couldn't they swim at the university's pool? Not even once?
I remember Frank Graham saying, Eddie, this is not my jurisdiction. You really need to go over to talk with the athletic department. And they gave us a runaround. The athletic department says, well, I'm in charge of swimming pool, but I can't make that decision. You really need to go talk with the athletic director. And we go talk with the athletic director, and he said, well, this is highly unusual. You really need to, I can't give you that kind of permission. You really need to go talk with the chancellor of the university, which was R.B. House. And I knew it was ended there. We did go see him. Okay, he did meet with us. He didn't want us to meet with us because he did not feel the others treated us with respect, and you could feel that he didn't treat us with respect. And so we let it go at that point. And the question started to circulate, what are they going to do about this? Are they going to stop the white kids from swimming? Or are they going to let us swim? Well, they didn't stop the white kids from swimming. They built us a swimming pool. Miss Cornelius Love anonymously gave money to build us a swimming pool in Hargraves. That's how that money came.
The connection between Cornelius Spencer Love and the pool ran through one man, Adolphus Clark, A.D. Clark, a longtime UNC employee who had spent decades as a bridge between the university and the black community.
He was, I think, the first NAACP president here in the Chapel Hill Carver area. His mindset was for bringing the youth and the young people together.
Adolphus Clark, he worked for a lady named Miss Love. She donated the money for the pool. And
Adolphus Clark was on the library staff for many years. Clark, we called him. His name was Adolphus, A.D. Clark. And Dr. Wilson said, well, we'll call you Clark. He was there in 1923. He worked on the staff from that time on. He was in the First World War. He'll tell you about his experiences in France. A person of the greatest character. Well, he was janitor for a good many years, and then they put him in charge of the mail room and made him a member of the staff. Just a man of sterling character, a pillar of his church, taught Sunday school. And when I came back, I'd been abroad in 1960. And he met me. And I asked him what he was doing with some news. Well, he was terribly cast down because some white man had promised them money for a pool at Robinson Street Center. And then, that was just at the time when the blacks were beginning to show some spirit, you know, and make people mad. The blacks were beginning to show a little muscle, and this white man had been made mad by something they did, and so he'd withdrawn his offer of the pool. Well, it made me mad too. Well, I said, Clark, I'm going to give you a swimming pool.
I mean, she just ended up out of the goodness of her heart and says, oh, I want to be good to black folks. It's because we raised the question. And so, you know, the negotiation started. That's how that got started, okay? There's nothing in the history books that's going to say that got started because she just had this swell of emotion that was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do because we raised the point.
There again, a lot of people in the community got together and helped work on the pool. You know.
So the pool was literally built by the community as well?
From my understanding from the history that I've heard, that community members did the fundraising for the pool.
We had lots of help. Clark managed the whole thing. He had committees.
We had to write essays to try to get funding for the swimming pool when they opened it up.
Well, I guess if the two of us had realized what it entailed, we might not have, because there's so many rules and laws and regulations. You know, you can't just go out and dig a hole and put water in it.
Mr. White Bynum took it upon himself, I guess, to get permission from somebody to go ahead and build that swimming pool. And he pretty much built that swimming pool, the same swimming pool that stands today. He built that swimming pool. Now, they came and they've done some more stuff to it, but he pretty much built that swimming pool.
Mr. White Bynum, who used to live right across the street from Hargraves, he laid a lot of the concrete and stuff.
Cemented, had it dug out, cemented and everything. And the first opportunity that we had in this community for a swimming pool, Mr. White Bynum, which stayed right here, this house over here, was the one who was responsible for that.
I know my father, he had a lot to do with the A.D. Clark pool. You know, I think he was the one that maybe went to the town of Chapel Hill and asked them, you know, we need to build a pool because I don't want my kids to get hurt in these woods and and all of this other stuff. And so they allowed him to get together with some of the townspeople, and they put together a plan to build the A.D. Clark pool. And so here come all of the money that it took to build the pool, and we got it. Mr. Adolphus, I remember him as a little boy, and his wife used to come down and visit the pool as the construction was going on. And finally, a year and a half or something like that, the pool was finished. And when they wrote up the people that donated the money, the people that did the construction, and at the bottom of the page it says Mr. Eric Bynum, engineer. That's my father.
In the end, it took a community and about 18 months. The A.D. Clark pool opened on a Thursday.
The pool at Hargrave, the pool opened up on Thursday afternoon. It was cold, but we still went.
For parents, the pool meant something beyond recreation.
During the period when the pool was built, parents felt safe. I mean, they felt safe allowing their kids to go over after 12 to swim because they knew that they were going to be taken care of.
And so I remember going as, kid, being in the baby pool and transitioning from the baby pool and taking swimming lessons.
I remember the baby pool, that's what we call it, the wade pool, but that was where we could go in and as toddlers and not learning how to swim yet. That's where we got our feet wet, our bodies wet and everything. And that was fun being in there. And then we graduated to the big pool after we had taken swimming lessons.
Very impressed by the lifeguards,
There were some young men from Lincoln who were role models for me because, one, young, they were gifted, they were handsome, and they were people that I wanted to emulate.
I really liked the fact that the same teenagers were the lifeguards in the community, and so that was very familiar. It was a lot of people in the community with life, and they just sat up there just looking over us. You know, we knew we were protected. The lifeguards knew who could swim and who couldn't, and when you go, a kid tried to go over there, blow the whistle, tell them to get back over to the other side. So they pretty much knew the level of each kid that was swimming.
I want to share some words from Rudolph Jackson. Quote, "I am really grateful to Mr. Pierman, who hired him, for giving me a job at the center. During the early morning, I alone cleaned trash from the water and used long brushes to clean the sides and bottom. I also used this time to swim laps around the pool to music from the piccolo inside the building. During the afternoon, kids from the communities arrived to have fun splashing and diving. This was the perfect job." I echo that sentiment. This was the perfect job for me. Having the opportunity to be here, continue that process of teaching younger kids how to swim and those that wanted to learn to be lifeguards.
So I learned to swim over here at Hargraves. I was 9 years old, and my sister Sharon started working at the pool. And I'd come over here with her every day. And I would just wade around the pool, and I would be on one leg thinking I was doing something. And then finally one day I just started going, and I was like, oh, sure, I'm really getting it in here.
The little kids would just be going around the side of the pool, they knew they could dog pedal. So they'd catch you, and they'd grab you, and they'd throw you out there in the middle of the pit. So you either swim or sink, you know what I mean? But they knew you could swim a little bit. They were just trying to give you courage, and I was one of those. They threw me out there in that pool, and I'm still here to tell the story today, so nobody drowned.
This is where I learned how to swim. If you all knew my mother and father, mother had told me, do not get in the pool. I was the only one of the 3 girls that would get in the pool. And I did learn how to swim. One day I got hit in the head at the pool down there. And the next thing I know, my mama was in that pool and was picking me up out that pool. Yes, ma'am. I got a real bad whooping that night. After I was all right.
The fun part was that if you were taking swimming lessons, you could get in the pool free. So me and my sister, we would take swimming lessons every year so we could get in the pool free.
And when it was break time, you wait until it was back over and you got back in it.
And then the games we played, once we got old enough to swim to get into the 12 feet area, it was a game called Red Rover. And everybody, you have 2 teams, and you have the baby swim from one side of the pool without your head being tapped. So if your head is out of the water, then it's tapped, you're out. And I never learned how to dive, but I would jump off the low diving board. I remember once just always watching the older kids jump off the high diving board. And I just watched. So one day I decided I was going to go up there and jump. And I stood in this line for about 10 minutes. I get up there and I look down and I was frightened. And I looked over at the lifeguard, which was my brother. And he looked at me. He said, "Jump." I looked down. I looked out. I looked back at him. And he said, "Jump." I didn't jump. He told me to get down from there and don't ever get up there again. And he didn't have to tell me that because I was never going back up there again. That was, that was frightening to just look down the high diving board. But that was a bad situation happened on that high diving board. The reason why they took it down, I wasn't there that day. My sister, I think one of them was, that heard about it.
I was standing outside the fence, and I was talking to a girl on the inside of the fence, and we were just talking, and all of a sudden I was seeing her go, and I heard a thump, and I looked over there, and the guy missed. He was from Wilmington. Best black diver I ever seen in my life. He was a triple gainer, 3.5 backwards, and somehow or another he missed the board. And when he missed the board, he came down on the concrete and hit his head. And I think he lived for a little while, but when he got to the hospital, they pronounced him that he had passed away.
And so after that, they took away the high diving board.
It was a loss the community carried, and still, every summer, the kids came back.
It was a safe place, and I had no idea at the time that it was the only place I could come to be safe. But it was one of those places when your parents put you out of the house and said, be back before the street lights come on. Was where I hung out. And I hung out over here so much that I wouldn't leave until my fingers and feet looked like raisins. Just wrinkles from staying in this pool all day.
And we used to swim for about 2 hours, 3 hours, sometimes maybe all day. And we could tell about how long we've been in the pool because we sort of move the strap from our top of our swimsuit to see how much tan we had gotten. That was an indication of how long we've been in the pool.
What had happened was, in that very pool, I had my very first kiss all the way down, up under the pool. I'm going to tell you, what had happened was, my brother was a lifeguard right up top, supposed to be watching, but what was his little sister doing under the water? Oh boy, when he got home, he was in trouble all day long.
When you get out of the pool, you're really hungry and you can smell the popcorn popping. And then you had the knee-high grapes, orange crust drinks, snow cones sometimes in that, and Nutty Buddies. I like the big candy bars, Baby Ruth, so you can just really get out and have your good snack. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you be dripping wet, just sitting there waiting your turn to order from the snack shack. And of course you had the kids in the community who worked the snack shack as well.
Every summer brought the kids back to the A.D. Clark Pool, and the center kept growing. For years the town had owned it, but left a lot of the day-to-day operations up to the community. Gradually that arrangement shifted, and a more attentive town administration brought new resources, tennis courts in 1978, and a renovated and expanded building in 1980.
They added on the back part to the Hargraves Center, and which was a good thing because we needed the space.
For years, it has simply been known as Robertson Street Center. In February 1973, William Hargraves, who had served on the Chapel Hill Parks and Recreation Commission, died suddenly, and the community he had served made sure his name lived on.
A guy named Billy Hargraves, who was very instrumental in Chapel Hill, one of the pioneers in Chapel Hill, got killed. Folks got together and decided they wanted the name, changed Robertson Street Center from Robertson Street Center to Hargraves Center, and that's where it's been ever since.
I did not know my dad, unfortunately. He passed when I was 22 months old. But growing up, you're Billy's child, aren't you? Yes, I am. I also came to camp here at Hargraves Center a number of times. One of the things that I got asked a lot growing up, oh, your family's rich. Y'all own the Hargraves Center. No, you don't own it. It was named after my father, which is a great honor and a wonderful legacy for my family.
From the early 1970s on, Hargraves continued to grow and serve the community in ways that went far beyond recreation. As I got older, would attend the community meetings here. We would have monthly meetings. Ms. Mary Norwood Jones, she was facilitating our monthly meetings, and that's where we would have information shared, what's going on with the town. If there were any concerns for neighbors, could voice them at these meetings, call in for town response, university response. If there's any issues with police, having them involved, and just settling things through those meetings. In 1987, a young boy tragically drowned at the A.D. Clark Pool, and several members of the black community wrote to the town council with concerns about how well the white lifeguards, which the town hired, were supervising the children in the pool. Gone were the days when the lifeguards were all from the community and knew every child in the pool. The town recommended hiring more minority lifeguards and staff members at the pool and training Hargraves employees who were from outside the neighborhood to help these newcomers appreciate its history and connect with the community better. Town officials, like neighbors, recognized that something was lost when the people caring for the community's children no longer felt like part of the community. As Hargraves grew, the town's resources added a gymnasium and indoor basketball court in 1998, which were later named for former directors Nate Davis and Fred Battle. And the town made continual improvements to the facilities, including upgrades for the playground equipment, the ball fields, and the pool. The basketball court being improved, the gym, and now which is named after Nate Davis and Fred Battle, the two directors, the baseball field getting more grooming than it was when I was growing up, the playground, more modern equipment for the kids, and the tennis courts having been improved. And yeah, there's been a lot of improvement. From the beginning, the town of Chapel Hill had owned the land and been responsible for the center. But during racial segregation, when white residents weren't coming to Hargraves, the town's officials weren't focused on it too closely. And so for decades, the center's black directors ran it the way the community needed it to be run, responsive, rooted, and theirs in every way that mattered. That arrangement held as long as Hargraves stayed invisible to the rest of Chapel Hill. But Chapel Hill was changing.
Within the past 2 to 3 months, I've met with students from UNC, and they come over here and see the swimming pool. We didn't know this pool was here. Well, how long have you been at UNC? 4 years? So, I mean, you never came this way. To me, years ago, the students came down to Franklin and Columbus Street, as far as they went. And then, they started building the other little stuff, like, different stores further down. So they came a little bit further. But still, they have not gotten all the way down Franklin and Rosemary Street to Robinson Street. So they're so surprised when they come over and see. And the same thing with some of the people in the black community.
As Northside was gentrified, as UNC students moved into the neighborhood, as the lines between black and white spaces began to blur, the town started paying closer attention. Hargraves was absorbed into the same bureaucratic structures that govern every other parks and recreation facility in Chapel Hill, bringing real resources, real investment, but also real distance from the community that built it. It's a complicated inheritance. The gym exists because of town money. So do all the renovations. But some decisions got made without anyone asking the people whose grandfathers hauled rocks to build this place what they thought.
Well, I was talking with a lady the other day, and she called, and she wanted to rent Hargraves for a family reunion. And I told her, how much it cost to rent it. And she said, she grew up in Chapel Hill. She no longer lives in Chapel Hill, but she grew up in Chapel Hill. And she said, that's our community center. I should be able to use it free. She said that community center is for our community and we shouldn't have to pay. And I'm going to talk to some people about taking the community center back from the town. I said, okay, now remember when you do that, the town provide a whole lot of support to all the facilities in Chapel Hill. I said, just like the support they provide for the other facilities in Chapel Hill, they do the same thing for Hargraves. Now, which I don't think that will happen, but, just think, we spent over $1 million to build a gym. The town spent over $1 million for the renovation of the pool in Hargraves. So if you're talking about taking something back, look at what you got to do. The town put a lot of money in this facility. They give this facility a lot of support. Some people may say, no, they don't, but they do, because I'm here every day, and I see, what's going on. But, I think the facility should continue to be operated, by the town of Chapel Hill. And just we as staff have got to look at bringing in some of those programs that people want to see.
When the town took over, it seemed like all that the community had was taken away, and everything was more town oriented, more town focused, and not so much community focused. Mr. Battle and Mr. Nate Davis, they made sure that the local kids still had a place at Hargraves. And Mr. John French, who's there now, he's still carrying on that tradition of making sure that the locals have a place.
I remember Nate Davis, even though he wasn't that much, he was older than I was, but he was someone that I looked up to and knew that, he would protect me, protect the kids in the community.
It's just a rich history that makes me super proud to just be a part and to make sure that I'm continuing to develop and grow what Mr. Davis, Mr. Battle, Miss Lucille Caldwell, people who came before me, continuing their legacies.
The directors of Hargraves have always focused on the needs of their community, but over time, some decisions were out of their hands. They, when the town wanted to change things around, like now the tennis court is a pickleball and tennis court and all of that. Not too many black people play pickleball. So it's like, what is this? It was a decision that the town made without asking for neighborhood input.
Well, I've gone to the pool once and I'm looking like, okay, this is not my space anymore.
We found out that the town, they would take Labor Day, turn the pool into a dog swim. People brought their dogs to swim at the pool. When we found that out, we're like, that was a slap in the face to the black community. You're allowing dogs to swim in our pool? And they said, well, it's the last day and the pool will be closed. I said, that's not the point. Because as one neighbor said, they used the dogs during the civil rights to control the crowd. So to have the dogs swim in a neighborhood pool that was mainly for the African Americans was really a disrespect. Nobody at the town was trying to disrespect anyone. Dog swims happen at pools all over the country. Pickleball is everywhere. But these are the kinds of decisions that get made when a community center becomes another line item, when the people making the calls are thinking about the town as a whole and not about what this particular place means to this particular community. The problem wasn't bad intentions. It was that nobody even thought to ask. Just the disrespect for the community, that part of town taking over, it left the community out.
Because y'all know Hargraves have changed. I almost didn't recognize Hargraves last year. I was coming to work and almost didn't recognize Hargraves. But I tell you what, this summer, I recognize Hargraves again because I'm working with little children who I work with their parents when I first started over here. So that's a sign that Hargraves is on the way back, and with y'all's help, it will never be gone again. We have to put our foot back in this place. We have to. And I'm going to tell you, this place is for us. It's by us. It's for us. We got to take it. We got to take it. This is us. We can't let them take this. We can't let them take this.
Every summer since 2022, the community has come back to A.D. Clark Pool, the same pool that got built because Ed Caldwell asked the right questions, that White Bynum cemented with his own hands, that Lucille Caldwell watched over with an iron will and a tender heart, that children left with raisin fingers and tummies full of grape knee-high and honey buns, and their first kiss still a secret. The town owns the land and the center. It has since 1940, but ownership and belonging are not the same thing. This place belongs to the people who built it, who fought for it, who keep coming back to it. That hasn't changed. The first event, it was so cool. It was like a homecoming where we had a lot of people to come back, those who, like myself, grew up here and remember the days of being, at A.D. Clark Pool, and hearing the stories, everybody's stories, and learning the stories. 2 lifeguards that I remember, they were able to come back and share their stories, and that was a highlight. We make the plans, but then the community itself adds to it and takes it to another level.
When y'all started these stories, I said, I can't even leave here. Because I had to hear some of these stories because I knew there was a rich history here. But man, y'all opened my eyes tonight.
The first thing that caught my eye was how many people from different generations were here. And I think that's like the coolest piece. And to hear the stories that, like, holy cow, we never heard this. And it impacted me because a lot of them talked about going to the creek and not knowing if they going to get out or not because of water moccasins or whatever. And then having this safe pool. So it's like, wow.
And the stories that you all are telling, as long as I've been here, I did not know these things. I saw the gym get built. I saw the pool house get remodeled once or twice. I saw Hargraves get remodeled once or twice. But the stories that you all are telling, that's priceless. And these little children growing up today, they need to hear it because there's a disconnect. And so we will be calling you all to come and speak to the young children, to tell them these stories so that they will know the value of having this pool and having that building, the whole complex.
The pool party has become an annual homecoming. People come back to the water and to each other.
And I'll never forget, I used to walk home after pool was closed through the little path, going back down to Craig Domains, was where I grew up. And my mother said she would look up and see me coming down, and she said, "You look like a little ink spot." Because I stayed out here so long, all day, every day, with my family, where we had a place to be. But little did I know at that time that was the place that we could be. So I'm here today because I'm looking at all y'all. It's an unspoken thing where we just know what we know. And we were here looking like little ink spots together. And ashy. But this place raised us.
I loved hearing the stories about everyone growing up here, and I can echo all of that, and just really honored that people in this community that were family and friends poured into us so that we would have a place that we could go and that we could be together and be family. And so I am honored that this pool is named after my great uncle, Uncle Dot, who he was to us. And I hope that this memory and this legacy lives on, so for generations to come.
In 2023, Hargraves Community Center was added to the U.S. Civil Rights Trail, national recognition of what this community has always known. The center where the NAACP first met, where Martin Luther King Jr. spoke, where children learned to swim, and teenagers fell in love, and neighbors built something that nobody could take from them. This center is now marked as an important site of American history. It always has been. You can't have Hargraves without A.D. Clark Poole, and you can't have A.D. Clark Poole without Hargraves. They're just meshed together because it's just a perfect match. This story isn't finished. The future of Hargraves always belongs to this community.
We need people to show up, and if they need something, we're interconnected. Like, what Hargraves needs is the community, and what the community might need is Hargraves, or maybe the community. Like, and if there's a conversation where the community doesn't need Hargraves, then that's another conversation. But yeah, I think we're interconnected. Emails or send us letters of what they might want to see at Hargraves, and then we can work together to even plan it and design the program so it fits all those things and maybe more.
They can volunteer. We always need tutors. We always have the big events like the Juneteenth event, the backpack event. We have the pool party. It's so many avenues that we have where they can come and just be a part of. Just come visit and hang out sometime where we can just talk and give us some of that insight.
The door is open.
I've worked at Hargraves. Next week will be 27 years. I was Nate's assistant, now I'm John's assistant. And the reason I'm at Hargraves is because of your great-grandchildren, your great-nieces and nephews, because I couldn't be in Wilmington to do what people did for me. At that Community Boys and Girls Club in Wilmington, 901 Nixon Street, they did the same thing for us. And while I'm here, I'm going to fight to make sure that people don't take this. Because it's okay for us to have pride in Hargraves. It's okay.
So Andre epitomized what Hargraves is about. Like, even though we work for the town of Chapel Hill, he would never say that he worked for the town. It's always been Hargraves. And with that, his thought process, his passion, everything that he did would always have Hargraves in mind.
But I don't think you can find anyone that cares more about young people than Andre,
What legacy he leaves? A fierce love.